Now we move to the second phase of the program, where the panel will ask its own questions and address it specifically to the candidates. To ask the first question, let me invite Rina Jimenez-David.
I hope you're still not bored on the issue of dynasties, because I'd like to ask Mr. Cayetano specifically, would you support any bill touching on the anti-dynasty provision in the Constitution? And what to you constitutes a political dynasty? And how would you and your sister avoid any misimpressions of conflict of interest if and when you serve together in the Senate?
Thank you. Hello. Thank you very much for that opportunity to answer. And I'm not, and let me agree with 51% nung sinabi ng mga katabi ko. Kung titingnan niyo yung Constitution, ang ayaw nila doon is not the dynasty per se, but the equal access to public service. You look at Caloocan, meron diyang mag-asawa, 3-term yung mayor, no? Tumakbo silang sabay, talo pareho. Merong magkapatid dyan, dati, mayor, congressman, one time nanalo yung isa, talo yung isa. Caloocan people are not complaining kahit lahat magkamag-anak tumakbo. Why? As long as bilangin ang boto nila at they have the right to choose, then they can choose. Kasi kung tatlong magkamag-anak but all good public servants, hindi corrupt, then they can choose. Pero kahit hindi magkamag-anak, pero napaka-corrupt, di ganun din yun. And it's the same thing for the United States of America. John Kennedy appointed his brother Bobby Kennedy as his Attorney General because he believed in him. Jeb Bush and George Bush Sr., George Bush Jr., Clinton and Hillary Clinton. Because let's face reality, even from biblical times, pagka yung line ng mga pare, line ng mga leaders, etc., there is a thing about having public service in your blood. Ang question, whether or not nga you're the kind of public officials that para sa bayan or para sa sariling interes. For example, if me and my sister would want to do these things for our personal interest, I would have followed my dad and followed my sister as far as party and have joined GMA. She offered us millions to in projects and in cash, just not to impeach her. They promised us to run, I could run for mayor of Taguig or run for senator. And they promised us many other things. But I chose to fight because I don't believe in the kind of governance that this government is running. So, ang hirap minsan because the people, for example, when Ms. Rina asked me, with all sincerity, no, I'm happy to answer or when you ask me. But ang problema ko sa public, your 40 million was spent by the two groups na panaydyaryo. Pero yung pinapakita lang nila sa anti-dynasty is only myself, Coco, and Noy Noy. Hindi nila pinakita na 2/3 of Congress are dynasties kay GMA and all of their relatives during the impeachment were appointed to public offices na yun hindi elected, appointed. And it also does not show that President Arroyo has 2 children and a sister-in-law and a brother-in-law running, no? But again, that does not make it right. That's why I offered 2 months before the election to show that I'm willing to sacrifice for the country. If the President tells her children not to run, I won't run either.
Thank you, Mr. Cayetano.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would like to direct this question to my compañero, who I haven't seen in a long time, till today. Attorney Adrian Sison. Attorney Sison, our overseas contract workers have always been hailed as our unsung heroes. And we all know that the economy was to a large measure made buoyant because of the inflows of remittances coming from our overseas contract workers. While we are grateful, we know also that the corresponding effect of this would be what you call the brain drain. We are losing a lot of our doctors who are willing to become just nurses. We are losing a lot of our engineers, our skilled workers. And I'm not just talking about domestic helpers, but even the skilled and the educated labor force. And now that we are on the verge of economic development, and it is an ongoing thing, what should we do now? Should we put a stop, or should we control or regulate the going out of our foreign skilled workers? And what kind of policy would you like to adopt if elected in the Senate on that particular subject?
Thank you, Attorney Mike Toledo, for that question. I agree with you that a lot of our productive workers are leaving the country. In fact, the statistic they say, depending on which one you look at, it's anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 on the average a day. And not only that, they are from the most productive ages of 20 to 44. I don't know how many of you work in the HR department of companies. No? Sad to say, many HR company directors discriminate against persons over the age of 35. So that's part of the problem. So that's one. We will ban that. We will ban that discrimination. New Zealand removed the mandatory retirement age. We should now rethink of hiring even people who are so-called retirable, bring them back to the workforce. Why? Because the reality, even the Asian Development Bank said, because of the reality of losing young people, you must have an economy structured for the very young and the very old, which we are not preparing for. We have an economy which is primarily BPO and call centers, no? Which is not necessarily the kind of economy that we have. Now, we cannot, in answer to the part of your question, we cannot stop them from leaving. However, when Lee Kuan Yew came here 5 years ago, there are 5 things he said, not necessarily in order of importance. 1, you've got to train your people well. Number 2, you have to pay them well. Number 3, you have to have transparent governance, which is part of our platform of the Kapatira. Number 4, you enforce the law regardless of who's on the other end. And number 5, you must have infrastructure. So, together with what Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew had suggested, let's do that. What we can do is negotiate with the receiving countries that if you're going to bring in our workers, most productive workers, to lessen the social cost, please include their immediate family. That's one, because that's one problem also less to handle. There's a 46% failure rate in our marriages in this country today, and partly contributed by that. The other thing we can do is we should address this to the workers and find out, it's like an exit interview. Why do they leave the country and so on and so forth. There's so much corruption in our country, and that includes also the private sector. Perhaps we can give a carrot approach to employers to have some form of profit sharing so we grow together. That way, not only will be the wages, which they cannot touch anyway, but if there is a stock option plan or a profit sharing plan, perhaps they will not leave readily. No? The other thing is overseas work is a temporary measure only. We should put a deadline to that. Why? Because that's not the kind of economy we should build on. In 1974, when they put this up, Blas Ople was saying it was a temporary measure, but now it's an institutional measure. Even the president saying, coming up with super maids, which, with your respect, is demeaning to our workers. No? So we should put a stop to that. We should really come together and build an economic agreement for the next 50 years, regardless of who is in power.
Thank you, Mr. President.